Here is the thing. Nobody in the tiny home industry wants you to Google. Right now, on Chinese manufacturing platforms, there are steel arch mini Quonset structures shipping directly to American driveways for less than the down payment on a used car. And the model you are about to see at number 3 on this list has a specific feature that a $50,000 American-built tiny home still does not include as standard equipment. Stay with me through every number on this list, because the math here is going to make you genuinely angry. A Quonset hut, if you have never encountered the shape before, is the curved steel arch structure the United States military used during World War II to house thousands of soldiers in a matter of days. The design is so aerodynamically simple and structurally sound that it has been standing on American farms, ranches, and rural properties for 80 years without a single major renovation requirement. Now Chinese manufacturers have taken that same proven concept, scaled it down to mini home proportions, refined the interior finishing options dramatically, and started shipping complete bolt-together kits to anyone in the world willing to pay attention. The tiny home industry spent the last decade building its entire brand on the idea that living small means paying big. These 7 models dismantle that idea completely, and by the end of this list, you are going to understand exactly why the domestic building industry responds to these structures with such consistent and deliberate silence. Before we reach number 1, which is the model that genuinely stopped me when I saw the delivered price per square foot, you need to understand one foundational thing about what these structures actually are. These are not glorified garden sheds with decorative curtains stapled to the walls. The steel gauge specification on most of these Chinese mini Quonset kits meets or exceeds the structural framing standards used in conventional American stick-built residential construction. When a tornado warning rolls across your county at 2 in the morning, you want to be inside a steel arch, not inside a wood frame box on wheels with foam insulation screwed to the studs. The physics of the arch shape distribute load in a way that vertical walls simply cannot replicate. That is basic engineering, and it is free with every one of these kits. So let us count down all 7. Model number 7 opens the story, and it opens cheap. The bare shell mini Quonset from Chinese manufacturers like Havit Prefab and similar Alibaba-listed suppliers comes in at roughly 160 to 200 square feet of usable interior space for somewhere between $3,000 and $4,500, delivered to the nearest American port. Marcus, a man in rural Tennessee who documented his entire purchase process publicly online, paid $3,800 for his unit and had the kit arrive on his land within 6 weeks of placing his order. The shell arrives as numbered steel panels that bolt together without welding, without a crane, and without a licensed contractor present. In most rural counties across the country, the structure qualifies as a temporary building under local codes, meaning no building permit is required to get started. Marcus assembled his shell alongside his brother over a long weekend using nothing more than a socket wrench set and a rubber mallet. $4,000 and one long weekend versus $50,000 and a 6-month production queue for a traditional tiny home that accomplishes the same fundamental job of putting a solid weatherproof roof over a person's head. But here is where the real question opens wide. If the bare shell gets Marcus housed for $4,000, what does another $3,000 actually purchase? That answer is model number 6, and it is more significant than you probably expect. The Insulated Panel Upgrade Kit is the single modification that separates a functional steel shell from a genuinely livable year-round home. Several Chinese manufacturers now ship complete package deals that include either spray foam or pre-cut rigid foam insulation boards, machined to fit flush against the interior of every arch panel. The finished thermal envelope on a properly insulated unit delivers an R value that competes directly with standard American residential wall construction. Derek, a man in Colorado who assembled his completed insulated unit during the winter of 2023, paid $6,200 total from the moment he placed his order to the moment he moved his furniture in. His electric bill, that first full winter, running a compact space heater and standard LED lighting, came in under $40 per month consistently. The comparable square footage in an American-built tiny home from a reputable domestic builder with equivalent insulation would have cost Derek somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 before delivery. He purchased a used pickup truck with the difference and still had money left over. And here is the detail that dedicated tiny home content almost never addresses. Derek's structure contains no wood framing to rot over time, no oriented strand board sheathing to absorb moisture after a compromised roof seal, and no interior wall cavity where mold can grow, because steel does not provide the organic material mold requires to colonize. That single fact matters enormously when you are still sleeping in that structure at year 10. Model number 5 is where the solar integration story begins, and this specific model is the one that makes traditional building contractors genuinely uncomfortable to discuss. Multiple Chinese mini Quonset manufacturers now ship units with pre-drilled anchor points and flush-mount solar rail systems built directly into the exterior curved steel skin during fabrication at the factory. James, a retired electrician living in Arizona, purchased one of these solar-ready arch units for $7,800, sourced a set of used but fully functional solar panels locally for an additional $900, and established a completely off-grid capable living structure for a total investment under $9,000. Here is the geometric advantage that nobody in the flat-roof tiny home market ever mentions. The curved arch profile naturally positions panels at favorable sun angles on both the morning and evening sides of the day without any adjustable tilting hardware. A flat-roof tiny home sits static and loses solar collection efficiency whenever the sun is low on the horizon. The arch works with the sun's full daily movement without modification. That is not a marketing claim. That is basic geometry, and the $50,000 tiny home market quietly ignores it every single day. Now hold that thought about geometry, because model number 4 is the one that most profoundly changes what a budget structure can actually be used for. The double arch, or tandem configuration, places two steel arch sections parallel to each other and connects them through a shared interior partition wall that can remain solid for full privacy or be opened into a pass-through for combined open-plan living. The combined footprint approaches 380 to 420 square feet, depending on the specific module dimensions ordered. That is 2 functional bedroom-sized spaces, a real dividing wall, and enough square footage to feel like a genuine home rather than an expensive camping solution. Chinese manufacturers, including several prominent Alibaba suppliers, list complete tandem unit kits starting at $10,000 to $12,000, with end walls, framed door openings, and pre-cut window rough openings all included in the base price. Robert, a man in upstate New York, purchased one of these tandem units and made a decision that reframes the entire cost calculation. He occupies one arch section as his primary living space and rents the second arch section out independently as a furnished studio apartment. That rental income is paying off the full cost of his entire structure, while Robert lives in his half without a monthly housing payment. Find me the $50,000 tiny home mortgage strategy that produces that specific outcome for a first-time buyer. Before we reach the top 3, one honest thing. Freight from port to your property runs between $800 and $2,000, depending on your state. Rural counties with no building permit requirements often still require septic approval before you can legally inhabit a structure. call your county planning office before you order anything. 30 minutes of research saves you a serious headache. Now, model number 3 is where this list gets genuinely uncomfortable for the domestic building industry. Model number 3 is the storm-rated reinforced arch unit, constructed from heavier gauge corrugated steel, with engineered cross-bracing integrated at the base perimeter, and it ships with documented wind load certification from the manufacturer, rated to sustained winds of 120 miles per hour. Kevin, a man living on the South Carolina coast, purchased one of these reinforced units for $9,500 after a tropical storm system completely destroyed his previous outbuilding. Kevin's reinforced mini Quonset stood through 2 significant named storm events during its first 18 months. Neither event displaced a single panel or shifted the base anchoring. 3 conventional stick-built tiny homes in Kevin's same county sustained serious roof damage during those identical storms. Achieving a comparable documented wind load rating from an American steel building fabricator would run between $15,000 and $20,000 for the raw structure alone before any interior work begins. The Chinese manufacturer is delivering certified engineering performance at a fraction of domestic labor cost. That is the complete explanation for why these units exist in the market and why American builders respond to conversations about them with such deliberate and consistent quiet. We are down to the final 2 models now, and I want to be direct. The number 1 model on this list is going to reframe the argument you have been building in your head about whether these are legitimate housing solutions or simply cheap placeholders. Model number 2 is the finished interior package, and this is the model that produces photographs that make people stop scrolling entirely. Chinese manufacturers have begun offering comprehensive interior liner systems as full upgrade packages, tongue and groove hardwood wall panel systems, recessed LED lighting channel tracks, pre-routed electrical conduit pathways built into the arch form, and mini-split air conditioning and heating rough-in mounting brackets, all engineered to the exact arch curve dimensions of their standard units. Tyler, a man in Washington State, purchased a complete finished interior package unit for $14,000 delivered to his property. He paid an additional $2,000 for local finish labor on the final interior details. At $16,000 total, Tyler is living inside a wood-lined, fully climate-controlled, solar-wired arch home that produces the exact visual impression of a premium architectural product. His closest friends, who chose the traditional domestic tiny home route, spent between $45,000 and $60,000 each, and occupy structures that perform no better on any measurable standard and look no more impressive in a photograph. Tyler is not bitter about the comparison. He simply cannot explain why more people in his exact financial position are not making the same decision. Model number 1 is the reason this entire video exists, and it is the most consequential development in budget permanent housing right now. The expandable modular mini Quonset system is a kit architecture that starts as a single 150 square foot core arch unit and grows by adding bolt-on arch extension rings along the length of the building as budget becomes available over time. The core unit costs $4,000 delivered. 2 arch extension rings add $1,800 to the total. 2 more rings the following year cost the same $1,800. Within 3 years of incremental purchasing totaling under $10,000, Gary has a 600 square foot permanent structure that he built himself, on his own schedule, without a mortgage application, without a bank approval, and without a building permit in his rural county. The tiny home movement spent years telling Gary that freedom meant purchasing the entire finished product at full retail price up front, and calling that liberation. The modular arch system is what financial freedom in housing actually looks like in practice. It grows in proportion to what Gary can afford. It never demands money he does not yet have. And when Gary needs another room, he orders 3 additional rings and spends a Saturday with his neighbor and a socket set. Here is what the tiny home convention vendor hall is not going to tell you directly. The steel arch structure, properly insulated with quality materials, equipped with a competent vapor barrier, and finished with a thoughtful interior layout, is not the budget compromise in this comparison. The $50,000 tiny home is the compromise. It compromises structural longevity to deliver a wooden aesthetic. It compromises on scalability because the box cannot grow beyond its original footprint. It compromises on long-term weather performance because wood framing and foam board insulation simply do not endure across decades of real climate the way galvanized steel does. And it charges $50,000 for those 3 compromises, while describing the result as a smart and modern housing choice. The 7 models covered in this list range from a $3,000 bare shell to a $16,000 move-in ready, finished living space. Every single one of them ships to your location, assembles without heavy lifting equipment in most configurations, and outperforms traditional tiny home construction on the metrics that govern whether a structure is still genuinely worth living in 15 years after you built it. If you are serious about exploring one of these for your own property, search the manufacturer names mentioned throughout this video directly on Alibaba and request a formal delivered shipping quote to your specific zip code before you commit emotionally to any single model. Shipping cost varies meaningfully by your distance from port, and you want that final delivered number before you fall in love with a price tag that does not yet include freight. Drop your state and your realistic budget in the comments right now, and I will respond personally with which of these 7 models makes the most sense for your specific situation. This channel exists to put housing options in front of people that the industry would prefer stayed buried. If this video handed you a real number to work with or a question worth asking, subscribe, because the next video goes even deeper into what Chinese manufacturers are shipping this year that American contractors have not yet figured out how to compete against. You just found the edge. Do not scroll away from it.